Joe Biden has announced that he's stepping down from the U.S. presidential race and has endorsed Kamala Harris, the vice president, as his replacement. This comes 4 months before Americans vote, upending the fight for the White House. This is coming also weeks after weeks of strong criticism from other Democrats following a disappointing debate performance against Republican Donald Trump at the end of June. In a letter sent on his social media account, President Biden says, and I quote, "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term." End of quote. Joining us now on the morning show as we review Biden's decision and the way forward for the Democrats ahead of the 2024 United States elections is Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, Nigeria's former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Good morning, Prof. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Thank you for having me on your program. Good morning, Ayo, and good morning, Rufai.
Morning, sir.
Well, Prof, I think the subject speaks for itself. Your take on the decision of President Biden to step down is a choice of Kamala Harris, and then generally, what's next in the race for the White House?
Well, I believe that probably for the next 20 years, we will still be debating this issue. It's unprecedented in the annals of American political history. First question, was he pushed or did he jump? Number two, his choice of Kamala Harris in terms of system, was that a right move for him to make or what? And there are several issues one could have raised. Now, when I was on this program about 3-4 weeks ago, after the debate, I said it will be a disaster for the Democrats if they are perceived as pushing and abandoning Joe Biden. But that if he himself withdraws willingly, then at least the ground will be open. Now, you see, if you watch him, even after the debate, the way he was walking, the mistakes that he was making, even at the NATO conference, calling the president of Ukraine, Putin, and all of those things. And finally, COVID. Then he had no other choice but for him to do the honorable thing and withdraw from the race. And I believe, I listened to you at the beginning of your program, and I think that there were two words you used that struck me. Honorable. That was the first one. He's done an honorable thing. And any time we talk about this, 10 years from now, we will still be using that term, honorable. It's been said that he has done a lot for the United States. I believe 50 years. That is the figure you've put on it. And it reminds me, just as a lot of commentators have said, of Lyndon Baines Johnson, who also served not only the Democratic Party, but the United States for a very long time. And unfortunately, his was not age. His was the disaster of the Vietnam War. Well, now, second question. The choice of Kamala Harris, is that a good choice? And I believe all of us have to agree that it is a good choice. Not necessarily because of her own character, but because she is the vice president. She is the normal anointee that Biden will have no other choice. I mean, it's like the king dying and you skip the Prince of Wales and going for somebody else. It is just normal that it has to be Kamala Harris. Let me say this. I hope nobody is going to be underestimating Kamala Harris. She had to take a low profile, and I said this again 3 weeks when I was here. When you are a vice president, you cannot be seen to be outshining the president. It's not done. You do what the president tells you to do. And if the president gives you impossible tasks, well, when you are accepted to be vice president, that's what you go to do. I think that Kamala Harris is going to be a hard nut for Trump to crack. Be careful of lawyers, especially somebody who's been an attorney general, a prosecutor. She'll take you to pieces with the way she will put her own questions and the way she'll use you to wipe the floor. And she won the Senate seat by 60% from California when she ran. So she's not an easy nut at all to crack. And people have said, oh, well, how many years really did she spend in the Senate? Well, how many years did Obama spend in the Senate before he went on to run for the presidency and won? So we have a very unusual situation on our hands, and it's no use making a prediction. All predictions will just be, well, thinking out of the box. We just don't know two things. We don't know what will happen at the convention,
yes,
and we don't know what's going to happen in the confrontation between her and Trump.
yes.
We don't know how the Americans are going to react to the possibility of the first lady, a black lady for that matter, occupying the Oval Office.
All right. I mean, you've said it.
I've read.
You've put it very well in terms of the fact that at best people can make predictions, and it's uncharted waters. We haven't seen anything like this, especially with regards to American politics, where an individual would pull out or die just days to the convention. And so at best what we can do is speculate and in terms of how much of a fight that VP Kamala Harris can put up. But a number of people have also said that there are certain things that she must do to not only, first of all, the first hurdle is to get the nomination, the party official party nomination at the convention, and second, to go head-to-head with Donald Trump with the possibility of winning that election, especially because Donald Trump has garnered more, shall we say, supporters, and in the polls, he's doing quite favorably. So the question I ask you this morning is, what are some of the things that she must do? What are some of the things that would strengthen her chances of emerging as the Democratic Party's candidate at the elections come November, and very importantly, be able to retain the seat of presidency to the Democratic Party?
Well, the first thing is, and she's done so, she hasn't put on any sense of triumphalism after Biden anointed her. She had said in that acceptance speech that she's not going to take the convention for granted. That, she's going to work hard to get the support of the delegates. Yeah, she has a good opportunity because in a way it was a joint what do you call it? Yes,
ticket.
It's a joint ticket. Yes, both she and Biden jointly ran for each one of the primaries. So that makes a good rationale in addressing, because I'm sure she's been on the phone probably for the past 24 hours talking to the delegates. It's a good case to make. You had already voted for Biden and myself. I'm not new to you. I'm not a new person. So that makes her job easy. The problems she faces are, one, the war in Gaza. She's going to carry that burden, that Biden burden. And my mind goes back to Hubert Humphrey. He carried the burden of the Vietnam War, which Lyndon Johnson carried. He disagreed with Lyndon Johnson, but he couldn't come out to say so openly. And if you recall, the demonstrations in Chicago against the Vietnam War, it was bad for it was bad for Humphrey. Even then, he lost the election by 1 point. So let us keep it in mind. And I recall an interview that was done with a Palestinian leader at the Republican convention who said, you will see the mother of all demonstrations in Chicago, where, of course, this was, of course, before Biden withdrew. Would they give Harris the benefit of the doubt that she was the vice president, she didn't have the last word? That's one issue she will have to carry. But again, she has great issues to run with, one being the abortion case. It's a good case for a woman to make in a way in which Biden could not. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Hello? Can you hear me?
All right,
I
Professor.
think the phone has switched off.
All right, Professor Akinyemi, we can hear you. However, I believe perhaps just on your end, you might be having challenges. But we'll just, Professor Akinyemi, of course, just dialing back in terms of starting with your question, Dr. Bati, an overview of what the announcement of President Joe Biden has done, and of course his nomination or his endorsement of his VP, Kamala Harris, as vice president. And I think he's made a very good point that one of the strong points she would use is that they were elected on a joint ticket. So at some point they had belief in her abilities to deputize for President Joe Biden in the event that anything happens. So that's a good point and a strong point to go to the delegates with.
They were elected on a joint ticket in a highly polarized election. When you check the popular vote count, there was a whole lot of there was not too much difference. Consistently in the last 2 or 3 election cycles, Trump has never won the popular vote. In fact, even with Hillary won the popular vote. He didn't win the popular vote. With Biden won the popular vote, but with a small margin. I like the fact that Prof was talking about that 68 elections between Humphreys and Nixon, that Nixon won. But when you also even look at the election, despite the Vietnam talk, Nixon only won that election with a popular vote of just 500,000 votes. They were put on 31 million.
All right. Let's say that would be the game changer.
Talk about this war.
Yeah.
You also forget that the Republicans are more even in support of Israel, and even if a Trump presidency come in, they will still fund Israel in this war. So a vote for Trump in the war is a condition of the war one way or the other.
Yeah.
Let's go back to
I
Prof.
believe Professor Bolaji Akinyemi is back with us. Professor Akinyemi, thank you so much. You were concluding your thoughts, and then Rufai would come in with his question.
Yes. I was saying that on Roe versus Wade, the abortion issue is going to be a very powerful issue for Harris to make and run rings around Trump on that very issue. And she will be able to gather the votes of the women on who has the right, to control whose body. So there are so many issues that, and that she will be able to make a good run and give Trump a run for his money. I will not write her off. In fact, if I'm to put my money on it, I will put my money on Harris winning this election, in spite of the fact that she's been brought in as the head of the ticket, on such short notice.
Okay, Prof. Good to see you again. So I wanted to go back to your narrative about that 68 elections and Humphrey and the Nixon race. That yes, the Vietnam War made a major part. Yes, we all know LBJ had to pull out. Yes, because of the protests in Vietnam and all that had gone on. But also was when he saw that the game was against him as regards the New Hampshire primaries. Once the New Hampshire primaries never went his way, he knew that it was all out. But this talk about war and extrapolating it to Biden, do you think that might also be the narrative? Because even when you look at that 68 elections, despite the conversation on the war, what really dent Humphrey's chances was a George Wallace that ran as an independent candidate in that election that got close to 10 million of the popular vote. So there was a Wallace factor. And you know that was the era of the shifting in American politics where, Wallace was very hard right because the Democratic Party used to be known to be the racist party probably before now. So it was that time that the thing was shifting, that a lot more black people were pivoting to the Democratic Party and a lot of the hard right-liners were going to the Republican Party. So there was a shift in general. And those were also the circumstances. Do you think that will also affect in this case of this war going on? Because Trump is supporting the war anyway. Him and the deep state are still going to pump more money to Israel if he gets elected. Is that really a factor? Or the fact that Biden can be scored as a great president because it was good for the economy and all of that. And that can also trickle down into Kamala Harris votes here.
Definitely, you are quite right. Biden had been good for the American economy. And that's why I said there are several other issues on which Harris can run and, give Trump a run for a month. I heard, I'm not sure how true it is, that young Kennedy had jumped into the race or had said yesterday that now he was giving serious consideration to being a third candidate. If that is true, that would be bad news for Harris. I hope it is not true, because it's likely them to pull in the liberal votes from Harris onto himself.
Prof, well, is it given that Kamala Harris, I get your point about when you say, well, it was a wise decision for President Biden to have anointed Kamala Harris. It makes sense. And he acted with maturity in that regard. But is it given that Kamala Harris will automatically inherit the support of the over 40,000 delegates that voted for President Biden in the primaries? Now, the chairman of the National Democratic Committee, Jeff Harrison, has said they are going to follow due process, which means other people, have the right to show interest. And the governors of Michigan, Illinois, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, have already, Arizona, and the transportation secretary, have all indicated their interest in this race. Do you think it's automatic that the donors, the delegates will all just say, well, Biden has anointed you, and they will follow her? Is it automatic?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you too well. The line was cracking. But I get the drift of your question. The fact that 30 million and above had poured in since yesterday, since the anointing of Harris, shows that at least the donors are not hostile towards Harris. There's a positive vibration towards her. She herself has indicated that the water is warm, jump in. Anybody else who wants to jump in, but she will have a head start. And if there are all these others that you have mentioned, will not only be fighting her, they'll be fighting amongst themselves. And they will have difficulties they will want to prevent the impression to Democrats in the country that they, rather than Biden, are the ones who have created confusion within the Democratic Party. I don't think there is any governor who will want to go into that race with that kind of negativity hanging around their heads. You are right. We cannot take it for granted. Not we. Harris cannot take it for granted. And I think she's played if you read her acceptance speech after the president made his own statement, she's been clever in what she has said, which is what I would expect of a clever lawyer. And she has said she wasn't taking things for granted. She will work and fight for the nomination, which is what I would expect, rather than an arrogance of triumphalism. I've been anointed and it's mine. And the Democratic candidacy is now mine. No, she hasn't taken that position.
Okay.
I think that, if I repeat myself, she is the one to beat.
Okay, Prof, who would you hazard for a VP pick? In a case where Kamala gets it, who would you hazard for a VP pick?
Oh, no. I don't know enough about the intricacies within the Democratic Party for me to pick a candidate to be a vice president. I don't have enough knowledge of who will add value to her own candidacy among all these people that Dr. Abati had mentioned.
All right, well, thank you so much, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, for your time with us this morning. Of course, this is just the beginning of this particular phase in the U.S. elections, particularly from the Democrat point of view, but would definitely get more updates and hopefully have more conversations with that. Thank you for your time.